Welcome back, focused learners, to today's Explainer. I am so thrilled you're here because we're unpacking something literally transformative today. Have you ever felt totally trapped by the right way to do things at work? Like maybe you felt a rigid professional methodology, whether that's a strict management protocol or a predefined coaching framework, was actually getting in the way of genuinely helping someone? We've all been there, right? Sitting across from someone feeling like our professional toolkit is suddenly a barrier instead of a bridge. Today, we're exploring a profound shift away from those strict formulaic ways of serving others and moving toward a much more fluid, responsive, and deeply human connection. This isn't just about coaching or leadership. It's about how we actually show up in the world when others need us most.
Okay, let's dive into this by stepping back, way back actually, to ancient Greek mythology. The Greeks used this really fascinating duality to explain the creative tension of life. On one hand, we've got Apollo. He represents everything we use to make sense of the world: order, clarity, structure, and reason. He's the guy who helps us organize our experiences and create predictability. But on the flip side, we have Dionysus. Dionysus represents the raw, unscripted emergence of life: instinct, spontaneity, vitality. He invites us to actually participate in the messy reality of experience, rather than just explaining it from a safe distance. And it turns out, the secret to human flourishing isn't picking a side, it's cultivating the capacity to move fluidly between both, balancing the structure of Apollo with the raw energy of Dionysus.
But of course, here's where we hit a massive roadblock in our modern culture. We're constantly, aggressively being pulled away from this balance. Just look at the systems we live in today. They're entirely designed to amplify quick reactions. Think about it. The algorithms running our digital lives don't reward thoughtful pauses. They reward instant hot takes, absolute certainty, visibility, and immediacy. And in our professional lives, we're getting overly attached to hyper-credentialing, strict frameworks, and ideological camps. We are absolutely flooded with content, and instead of gaining deeper wisdom from it, we just double down on our attachment to being right. Basically, we're leaning way too far into rigid Apollonian structures and losing our vitality in the process.
To really ground this intense philosophical tension into something practical, we're turning to the insights of our author, Tony Zampella. Tony Zampella is the founder of Bhavana Learning Group, experts in contemplative learning to cultivate inner wisdom. As a wisdom guide and leadership and learning consultant, Tony integrated ontological inquiry and Buddhist psychology to sustain contemplative practice. His work is incredibly powerful here because it gives us a roadmap to navigate this modern chaos and return to a grounded, highly responsive way of being, both professionally and personally.
So how do we actually find our balance again? Well, Zampella introduces a concept that requires us to really pause and take a breath: restraint. But I want to be super clear about how we're defining this. This is not restraint as suppression. It's not about suffocating your spontaneity, biting your tongue, or forcing rigid discipline on yourself. Instead, restraint is the capacity to remain totally free from attachment to either that Apollonian or Dionysian impulse. It's deeply rooted in an inner knowing of enoughness, what Taoist traditions beautifully call wu wei, or effortless action. It's knowing when you have enough certainty, enough explanation, enough action. By practicing this kind of restraint, you aren't shutting down. You're actually creating the necessary space and freedom to genuinely respond to reality, rather than just blindly reacting to it. Let's move to and see how this builds into practical application. Zampella identifies 3 interrelated dimensions for serving others, and they all share a crucial common thread: cultivated awareness. First, we have presence. This is the sheer awareness required simply to be with reality exactly as it is, without trying to instantly fix it. Next is discernment, which is the awareness needed to really understand that reality, to see the deeper patterns at play. And finally, responsiveness. This is the awareness necessary for acting skillfully within that reality. Everything, every meaningful interaction, every moment of genuine service springs from this foundational ground of cultivated awareness.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens when we bring these dimensions together. Fascinating things emerge. At the intersection of presence and discernment, we cultivate humility. And humility is absolutely vital because it restrains our desperate need for absolute certainty. It reminds us that reality is always richer than our limited interpretation of it. Then, when discernment and responsiveness meet, we create space. This completely dissolves our reactivity and gives us that vital, life-saving pause before we act. And finally, the mix of presence and responsiveness creates spontaneity. Now, to be clear, spontaneity isn't reckless impulsiveness. As Zampella notes, it's a disciplined attunement to the moment, kind of like a master jazz musician who improvises beautifully exactly because they so deeply understand the underlying structure of the music.
All of these intersections point us toward one vital practice: non-attachment. Let me clear up a very common misconception here. Non-attachment absolutely does not mean detachment, apathy, or indifference. Not at all. It means freedom. It is the freedom from clinging to any particular interpretation, professional identity, specific method, or desired outcome. When you're non-attached, you are fully present, but you don't need the interaction to go exactly your way to feel successful. Non-attachment is the master key that allows us to dance fluidly between the order of Apollo and the vitality of Dionysus without becoming imprisoned by either one.
So, what happens when we lose this non-attachment in our professional lives? Zampella points to a modern crisis, specifically within the coaching and leadership industries. Decades ago, the focus of coaching was mostly on the practitioner's being. It was all about cultivating yourself as an open vessel to co-create with a client. But over the last decade, in the pursuit of professional legitimacy and standardization, the field has elevated rigid frameworks, strict competencies, and above all, a strictly non-directive stance as the ultimate virtue. We've essentially replaced fluid co-creation with rigid methodology. And honestly, in doing so, we've lost some of the magic of real human connection. Now, what's really interesting about this is how this shift has created a fascinating, completely unspoken hierarchy within the profession. There's this underlying belief that good coaches only ask open, non-directive questions. Poor coaches ask direct, pointed questions. And if you dare to offer an answer or share an insight, well, then you aren't coaching at all. You're just giving advice. Zampella calls this the purity trap. It's a trap where protecting the strict definition of a coaching method actually becomes far more important than serving the complex, living human being sitting right in front of you. To show just how wild this purity trap can get, Zampella shares a pretty fantastic anecdote. He noticed clients were arriving to his sessions totally overwhelmed and distracted from their busy days, so he started having them do a simple breathing exercise for a few minutes before beginning. And guess what? It helped tremendously. The clients felt grounded and ready to work. But when he shared this practice with other coaches, instead of discussing the client's improved experience, the conversation devolved into an intense academic debate over whether instructing a client to breathe constituted advising or teaching and therefore violated the sacred rules of pure coaching. As Zampella pointedly notes, we were literally just breathing. It's the perfect example of the method becoming the master rather than the servant. This brings us to a foundational truth of our explainer today, echoing the insights of industry experts like Rebecca Ruschman, who also studies these deep interpersonal dynamics. The type of intervention you use doesn't matter nearly as much as where it's coming from. Sometimes serving the moment genuinely requires asking a broad question. Sometimes it requires teaching a specific skill. Sometimes it requires challenging the person directly. And sometimes it literally just requires sitting with them in absolute silence. The determining factor is not the intervention itself, but the quality of presence, discernment, and responsiveness behind it. Operating this way requires a totally different approach to interacting with the world, which theoretical physicist David Bohm called participatory consciousness. Bohm argued that genuine understanding doesn't come from standing outside of a situation and coldly observing it with an Apollonian detachment. I mean, you can't truly understand a river just by standing on the bank and taking notes on the water flow, right? True understanding emerges only through participating in reality. True presence means you are entering into a living, breathing relationship with the experience at hand.
Because of this, the most masterful practitioners out there, whether they're coaches, managers, therapists, or guides, are not fiercely attached to a single method. They move fluidly across all these boundaries. They bounce seamlessly between coaching, mentoring, consulting, teaching, challenging, and witnessing. And they don't do this as a compromise of their professional purity or because they lack discipline. They do it as a genuine, natural response to what the person in front of them actually needs in that exact, unrepeatable moment. This brings us back to our Apollo and Dionysus metaphor, framing a really fascinating modern contrast. On one side, we have artificial intelligence. AI is the ultimate Apollonian tool, right? It can generate brilliant questions, summarize vast patterns across millions of data points, and analyze experience with flawless clarity. But on the human side, we have that Dionysian aliveness. Humans bring trust, raw intuition, deeply felt meaning, and the unique ability to actually participate in an experience together. So the crucial point is perfectly captured in this striking quote from Tony Zampella. AI is incredibly powerful. It can analyze the data of human experience all day long. It can offer increasingly sophisticated insights, but it cannot participate in experience. The art of truly serving another person happens in that intersubjective space, that deeply shared awareness between two living beings, that depth of connection, that co-created meaning that will always remain completely beyond the reach of any algorithm. To summarize Zampella's core philosophy here,
Serving isn't about applying a rigid template so you can feel secure in your professional identity. It is simply about recognizing and responding to what the moment genuinely requires. As a practitioner, your goal is to become a clear vessel. You use the spaciousness of non-attachment to free yourself from your own need for certainty. And from that vast spaciousness, you co-create the absolute best next step with the person sitting in front of you.
I want to leave you with a single, powerful question today. Think about your own professional life, the way you lead, or even your personal relationships. When someone comes to you in need, are you just applying a prepackaged method to the moment to protect your own certainty? Or are you stepping into the chaotic, vibrant reality of the Dionysian dance and truly participating in what the moment requires? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, Focused Learners. Keep reflecting on that question, and I'll see you next time.